of June 2018. We have a lot lined up for you today here on Leadership Forum, and today we'll be training our focus on mentorship, right? What is mentorship? Do we really need it? And of course, if you have that particular program in your company or wherever you are, if it's in school as well, how do we also have a very concrete program that will be exceedingly beneficial for your employees, your students, and even the entire country, where there's a bath in the country where when it comes to critical leadership, we cannot really point out on who can be a person that we can call is a model or a person that we can call is a mentor. That is what we'll be looking at much later in the course of the program. And of course, you can see already we have our guest who is in the studio. We're eagerly waiting for others to join us early in the morning today. That will be what we'll be discussing. So remember to head over to our Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is a profile name on Facebook. Give us a thumbs up there over there so that we can continue with that particular discussion. I'm running a flu, so my voice may be a bit nasal, but you can excuse me. But let's see the good, the bad, and the ugly in our dailies today. This is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation. Bad sugar, bitter truth. Some contaminated sugar was allowed into the market. That's a tragedy. The disaster is the utter destruction of millions of livelihoods in the sugar belt by avaricious Martians and their political minions who have killed the local industry for quick import profits. You have a special coverage of this on page 4, 5, and 6 of the Daily Nation today. And you can see here also a farmer transporting sugarcane along the Nairobi-Kisumu road yesterday. This is in the front page of the Daily Nation today, and this is what the various agencies are saying. The Anti-Graft Agency is saying Anti-Corruption Commission is tasked with investigating and arresting rogue traders. Where was it? KRA, how did Kenya Revenue Authority allow into the country and tax inputs of questionable sourcing? Also on KEBS, all items allowed into the country must pass standard tests, yet poisonous sugar evaded KEBS radar. Also on KPA, Kenya Ports Authority did not keep away contraband, whether smuggled in or declared. That is the story that you can follow the full report, as I've mentioned, a special coverage inside the Daily Nation today on page 4, 5, and 6 of the Daily Nation. We also have a sidebar story, and this is what it is on the front page of the Daily Nation as a sidebar story. Juma vows to stay with Ruto. You can follow her story on page 2 of the Daily Nation. Also, Catholic Church to return land to Nyeri farmers. That is on page 8. On fly sucks rerouted doomed flight. You can follow this story at the back page of the Daily Nation, where we have the preliminary report showing managers asked pilots to land at JKIA for convenience. That is a story that you want to follow also at the back page of the Daily Nation today. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Standard. And this is your headlining story as well. Shocking verdict on sugar. It says, court disaster. This morning, many Kenyans scooped sugar and added to their tea and coffee. Maybe you're doing it right now. Others took juice and confectioneries laden with sugar, but there is a consignment whose suitability for human consumption is in doubt. Then, two CSs and a security chief contradict each other, and yesterday KEBS gave its own version, which basically means you are on your own. This story continues on page 6 of the Standard today. Also, you can follow some of the measurements that are given here. 2 milligrams, acceptable levels of copper per kilogram in sugar fit for human consumption. 20.7 milligrams amount of the metal per kilogram found in some of the consignment of seized sugar. And of course, you can read the rest there that we have also on the front page of the Standard. You can, of course, excuse also my measurement. Maybe they could be wrong. The copper that was detected was above the required levels identified by the KEBS standards. That is what Managing Director Charles Onwai is saying. You can follow this story in the Standard this morning. Let's move on and we'll see what we have also on the front page of the Star. I'll try and load it up quickly for it. You can follow this story also inside the People Daily. Also, lead, anemia, weakness, kidney, brain damage, copper, nausea, vomiting, cramps, also confusion. KEBS government reading from different scripts, even as MPs demand to know whereabouts, quantities of contaminated commodity. This story on page 4 of today's People Daily. We move on and we see what we have also on the front page of, let me try and retrieve the Star for you quickly so that you can see what is also inside the Star today. It seems to evade me. Where is the Star? Right. I shall show you much later that in the course of the program. But we can see also what is on the front page of the Business Daily. And this is what you are waking up to today on the front page of the Business Daily. Top law firms caught up in 450 million shillings CBA loans fraud. Senior State Council and land valuers among advocates implicated in ring. That story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily. KEB says copper found in samples of sugar. Here's a sidebar story there. You can follow it on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. Also, employers warn of job losses over housing tax. That story is also on page 4 of the Business Daily. City demolition. This is a standalone picture, and we can see here police officers standing guard during the demolition of structures built along the railway lines at the Kibera slum in Nairobi yesterday. You can follow that story also inside the Business Daily today. A quick look also at what we do have on the front page of Taifa Leo. And this is what is headlined at the front page of Taifa Leo. Sukari wa Kenya wachezwa. That is what we have on the front page of Taifa Leo this morning. Maafisa wakuu wa serikali watoa kauli za kukanganya kuhusu sumu kwenye sukari iliyoagizwa kutoka ng'ambo. That story continues on page 2 of Taifa Leo. You can see their faces there. Uchunguzi umeonyesha sukari ina viwango vya juu vya zebaki na shaba. That is what Fred Matiang'i, waziri wa usalama, alisema. Also, sukari yote inayoingia Kenya ni salama. Hatuna habari kuhusu zebaki kwenye sukari. That is what, of course, we can see Eden Mohamed, waziri wa viwanda, saying, flying in the face of what also the Cabinet Secretary of Interior is saying. This is what we have on the front page of Taifa Leo. Let's move on and see what we have on the front page of other dailies across the region. We go to Tanzania, where we have the Citizen for you, and this is what is headlining the front page of the Citizen. Magufuli differs with Bunge team on new style of government payment. President reiterates the need to have a single treasury account to make it easier to monitor payments from state coffers and curb misuse of public funds. That story continues on page 2 of the Citizen. World Bank approves 10.04 trillion shillings credit for electricity is another story on the front page of the Citizen in Tanzania. And you can see also President John Pombe Magufuli displaying in Dar es Salaam yesterday a symbolic check or a dummy check for 1.5 billion shillings paid to the government as its share of TTCL Corporation's profit for 2017-2018. You can follow this story also inside the Citizen in Tanzania. Ruwaichi's to succeed Cardinal Pengo. The Vatican appoints Jude Tadiers Ruwaichi as a I've never seen this word, or I can say as an Archbishop of Dar es Salaam. That is what we have also on page 3 of the Citizen in Tanzania. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Mwananchi in Tanzania. Rais Magufuli apigilia msumari mradi wa stempu. That is a story that you want to follow on page 4 of Mwananchi. And uteuzi wa utou waibua mjadala. That is what we have on page 4 also of Mwananchi. If you're waking up in Tanzania, we still have also the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Kayuhura has case to answer. That is what General Odongo is saying from the supervisor, the Internal Affairs Minister, who oversees police, says there is reasonable evidence on the alleged crimes against the former police chief who is detained on unspecified charges. This story continues on page 4 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Also, government to sell 45,000 barrels of crude oil is on page 6 of the Daily Monitor. This is happening in Uganda. And police aiding escape of Rwandan spies. This is what the minister is saying. Torture victims confront Right Commission boss. The trio who interjected after listening in on an exchange between journalist and Mr. Med Kagwa informed him to respect journalists because he will require them when in trouble. That story continues on page 3 inside the Daily Monitor in Uganda. We can cross over now to Rwanda, where we have the New Times, and this is what is on the front page of the New Times in Rwanda. Are tax incentives good for Rwanda's economy? That is their biting question. That is splashed on the front page of the New Times in Rwanda. And you can follow the story also inside page 4 of the New Times in Rwanda. This is all about transformation. Transformation ought to focus on citizen, and that is what President Kagame is saying. He said this speaking at the Second African Transformation Forum in Accra, Ghana yesterday. You can follow this story on page 3. Also, BRD Swedish body in $50 million deal to boost energy sector. That story on page 5 of the New Times in Rwanda. Let's see what we have also on the front page of this is the Wall Street Journal. This is the latest edition, I should say. Trump holds, beg your pardon, it just jumps elsewhere. Let me try and retrieve it again for you so you can see what it has. Trump holds family separation. Of course, the president in reversal sign order to detain adults and children together at border. And you can see this is how it looks. Honduran, I should say, family seeking asylum in the U.S. after fleeing a gang violence. Violence bolted Wednesday at a shelter in Reynosa, Mexico. You can follow that story also inside the Wall Street Journal. Also, Amazon rises as one of DC's most powerful players. Its push into Washington brings big rewards, but also political risks. Also, Fox accepts Disney's cash-enhanced bid is another story that you can follow also inside the Wall Street Journal. Also, retirees grow workforce shrink in strain for U.S. is another story that you want to follow also on page 2 of the Wall Street Journal. We have Wall Street Journal. We have also this editorial cartoons for you. And this is what has been drawn by the cartoonist today. This is in the Daily Nation. Mercury, copper, and lead in our sugar. We are not safe anymore. It's a shame to divert our attention from corruption. This is what also Njiku is saying. And you can see there, of course, the lab technicians, right? That is Matiangi, and also CS, of course, Eden Mohammed personified here, giving different, of course, results from this particular test. One saying, yeah, the one is actually contaminated. The other saying there's no contamination at all. So this is what we have as today's editorials cartoon in the Daily Nation. I shall be showing you the others much later in the course of the program. For now, let's put this horse into a full run by looking at the highlights. West Kenya Sugar Company Chairman Jaswant Rai speaks out on illicit sugar import claims. DPP directs DCI to investigate if the money is being used by an NYS scam suspect for bail is part of loot. And enough is enough. Regional leaders tell South Sudan warring parties. Jaswant Rai, the chairman of Rai Group and West Kenya Sugar Companies, has strongly denied the involvement of his firm in the importation of contraband sugar. In an exclusive interview with NTV's Seth Olale, Rai blamed unscrupulous traders who have colluded with some millers to distribute the unprocessed sugar into the market. He also blames the leader of majority in the National Assembly for unfairly targeting West Kenya Sugar Company in the ongoing sugar saga.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rai, for accepting to coming over for the interview on NTV. We'll just go straight forward. You're making headline today, and you have been accused of being one of the largest importers of contraband sugar. What is your response to this accusation?
I need to clarify that there is not 1 kilo of contraband sugar I have imported. Whatever quantities I have imported, and I agree what Honorable Dwali has accused me of, 186,000 tons. We have imported. We've imported it legally, following all due process according to the law of Kenya. If you remember last year, there was a severe shortage of sugar, of maize and milk. And the government allowed the importation according to this Kenya Gazette of 13th May. And whatever I have imported has been imported officially through the port of Mombasa. And in fact, the information he has got, I believe, is from the legal sources.
The leader of majority in the National Assembly, and you mentioned him there, says that, or rather alleges that you use subsidiary company to import sugar. We're not sure about either contraband or contaminated, but he says that you use subsidiary companies to bring in contraband sugar. Some are not licensed to import the sugar. Is this true?
Absolutely not. Yes, there are sister companies within the group. When you import a quantity of sugar which has to be financed, West Kenya alone was not able to finance that quantity. And there is no restriction in Kenya that other companies cannot import. During this exemption period, a lot of other companies were allowed other than mine. And whatever I have imported through those 4 or 5 companies, each and every one of them has approval, starting from the Sugar Directorate, cabs. When the sugar was landed in Mombasa, it was cleared through customs. All due revenues were paid, port charges were paid. In fact, we were the only company who have also paid demurrages on those ships. If you remember, there was a lot of maize ships in the port. They were very congested at that time. There have been other ships carrying sugar which were cleared within 2-3 days directly to the port. And I will give you the names. And Honorable Dwale is only targeting my companies. I saw the interview you had yesterday. He gave you a list of the companies. I've printed them. And I saw the way he was turning the pages. It was a long list. But he's only chosen to highlight my companies, not anybody else. And the question is, why? Who is he protecting? There was over 1 million tons of sugar, or like the Daily Nation has said today, they're talking about kilos now, not even tons. So I can say over 1 billion kilos of sugar was imported in 2017. What I have imported is under 18% of the total importation. And I will explain to you why the quantity I have imported is what I produce in a normal year using local sugarcane. The fundamental reason why duty-free sugar was allowed to be imported, because there was a tremendous shortage and prices were going haywire. In May, I remember the price was something like 6,000, 7,000 shillings a bag. And the government had to take action because end of the day, the common man was suffering. And whatever I've imported, we have got all the documentation which I will present to the parliamentary committee when I'm invited. And I will table them. Each and every document I have not taken one shortcut. I have paid all due revenue to the government.
Mr. Ray, just give us your perspective about the entire saga about sugar and about contraband sugar, to be exact. Who is behind this? Because definitely there is contraband sugar. There is someone who's doing dirty business from Mombasa and it's having its way inside the market. You've absolved yourself, you say you're not in it, but who's behind this?
I think this is now investigative journalism. The Kenya authorities, they will get to the bottom of this, I'm sure. And I have nothing to hide. They have come to me as one of the importers. We have given them each and every document we have. They have taken samples. The question is, why is only my name being splashed all over? And yet, there are hundreds of importers who have imported sugar last year.
What can you say to the cane farmers in Kenya and in Western Kenya?
If you are a farmer, you've grown cane, you wait 18 months for it to mature, it's harvested, sugar is produced from that sugar cane, it's sold, and the factory does not pay you. How do you expect that farmer to survive? That sugar has been sold. And that is the fundamental issue. Mills have been given billions of shillings. West Kenya has not been given a shilling.
And Treasury, Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich has denied that his decision last year to issue a gazette notice allowing duty-free importation of sugar into the country was a platform for well-connected individuals and companies to import contraband and contaminated sugar. Rotich says the move was informed by President Uhuru Kenyatta's declaration of a drought disaster that saw a shortage in supply of sugar and maize last year.
It is in Nakuru blankets, go down. It is in JB minor go downs in Mombasa. It is in Riply and Team Cells in Nairobi. It is in Sukari Industries in Diwa. So my question I'm asking is, why are we chasing few wholesalers who don't import sugar, parade them in front of the media, and you are not going to these said go-downs?
Question of whether you import the right sugar and all that. There are agencies at the port to ensure that the sugar that comes to the country are the right sugar.
The Director of Public Prosecutions, Nuruddin Haji, says he has received a letter from the Asset Recovery Commission stating that about 3 million shillings was withdrawn from an account that was under investigation in the NYS Season 2 scandal. This money, he says, is part of 100 million shillings in an account under investigation. The EFCC says that a part of the reason why they were registering low figures in court cases that have been heard and determined is because of the slow pace in which I should say, the judiciary is dealing with them.
Suits. We have one in Kitale, worth 25 million. That's why I gave you that book. We have another one for Nairobi County, 1.6 billion. It's all pending in court. We have another one for Kenya Meat Commission. I think the former MD. We are supposed to recover 11,500,000 from him.
I think there has been misinterpretation. The sugars that were seized were tasted, and they had chemical levels that were not fit for consumption. I think that will also be released in due course.
Sugar that is unaccounted for, even in terms of revenue, even in terms of our the vulnerability of our border points or our entry points. It's a big security issue.
And there is a case that I've put here, which is the Kenya Bureau of Standards. And I thought it was important because there might be some actions that we'll take.
The players of corruption has been so difficult. It's difficult in that the definition given by Kenyans sometimes is that when you talk of small fish, a chief, a policeman, a teacher, or a junior clerk in the Kenya Revenue Authority. But when you look at, on some instances, the volume of what they engage in, they might be far much bigger than any big fish that somebody can refer to.
I think we need to appreciate that the Constitution tried to ensure that there are checks and balances, that you have those who investigate, like the EFCC and DCI, and those who prosecute, like the ODPP.
And ODM leader Raila Odinga wants investigators from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations to be at the forefront in the fight against graft in the country. Raila was speaking at Syokimau in Athi River, the home of the late Migori Senator Ben Oloch. Some of the ODM leaders said it was of no use to mandate the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to investigate people accused of embezzling public funds. Instead, the accused should be arrested and prosecuted. Raila said the fight against corruption was among the 9 points they agreed to work on that was brought about by the handshake between him and President Uhuru Kenyatta.
I also want to convey the condolences of our other NASA leaders, Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka and Honorable Musalia Mudavadi. We want proper investigations and timely prosecution of those who are guilty of corruption. The other issues are going to be addressed, and they will be addressed properly in an orderly fashion so that we see how we can improve the governance structure of our country. We don't want Kenyans again to go to an election when Kenya is not properly prepared.
African leaders meeting in Ethiopia's capital Addis Ababa on Thursday told South Sudan's president and rebel leader that enough was enough. The time for promises was over and they needed to act and bring peace to their country, as time was not really on their side. It is the first time since 2016 that regional leaders were able to bring South Sudan's President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar together for talks when a peace deal collapsed and fighting re-erupted between their forces. The meeting had been billed by regional leaders as a step forward towards ending 5-year war. And we know a good mentor is wise and willing to share his or her knowledge and experience in order to help you succeed. It's like having a wonderful trusted ally to go to whenever you're feeling unsure or in need of support. They can help you set and achieve career goals, make smart business decisions, overcome workplace challenges, learn new skills, or simply offer an outside perspective when you're facing frustrations at work. The benefits are truly endless, and of course, we want to train our focus on truly when we're talking about mentors, when we're talking about role models, especially in Kenya, whom can we actually look up to and we say, this can be my mentor, this can be also our role model. We want to hear, of course, from the expert this morning. I will introduce them to you. We have with us today Mary Mukundia. She's the CEO of CDI Africa and Executive Leadership Coach. Also, we do have with us as well Emily Kamande Osoro. She's a Director, Rise and Learn. Thomas Mundir, Director, Coaching and Executive Mentoring, Strathmore Business School. Also, we do have with us Dr. Cesar Mwangi, who is the Executive Director of Center for Personal Leadership. Also, we do have with us as well Peter Deng, who is an executive coach, I should say, and a writer as well. Let's just dwell on mentorship briefly, because of course we shall be hearing from you extensively, especially from the lectern. And we just want to lay the groundwork when we're talking about a mentor. Why do we need a mentor? And it's just mentoring for young people, right? If someone maybe is in the upper reaches of, you know, should I say the age, or yeah, you're getting up in years, do you really need a mentor? Some people feel like, I've retired, why should I be looking for a mentor? So can we explore this morning? And we know there are various facets of mentoring. What is a concrete mentorship program? And do I really have to have a personal touch with my mentor? Or I can actually be looking, you know, following a mentor via media? Do we need that personal touch? What are some of the experiential, you know, facets that come in when we have this particular program that is one-on-one, or maybe I don't even know who, you know, my mentor does not really know who the mentee is. So these are some of the things that we want to discuss this morning. And maybe we can just begin from the far end with Peter Deng, just to give us the groundwork so that we can actually, of course, just briefly set the stage for this discussion.
Well, thanks, Debarl. It's good to be back here.
It's been a long while.
Well, it's been a while, yes. I like what you said in your introduction, that a lot of times when we talk about mentorship, we think of an older person mentoring or supporting or advising a younger person. And sometimes we forget that all of us need a mentor. And it doesn't matter where you are in life, what stage you're at, there's somebody who has walked that journey, somebody who has some knowledge, some experience, something to offer you.
Yes.
And a wise person is one who does not feel that he has reached the end of his learning or her learning, and is always looking for somebody else to help them, to stand on their shoulders as they go through life.
Thank you. Right, let's hear from Emily, a mentor.
Right. Just like it's been mentioned, for mentorship really to take place, you need to have kind of an agreed relationship between the mentors and the mentees. And the other piece around who needs mentorship, it's really for everybody. It doesn't have to be for the younger generation, because for anybody who succeeded in life, they had somebody to hold their hand. In terms of how the programs run, you have mentoring programs that are either formal or informal. So there are in organization setups, for instance, organizations have taken a structured approach where they match a mentor and a mentee. And generally speaking, you can also have these relationships taking place informally, where the senior people or the more experienced individuals then will mentor, you know, the less experienced ones.
Okay, thank you. Thomas, good morning.
I think first, good morning. It's nice to be here. First, I'd like to just echo what my colleague at the beginning mentioned. I think the justification for why one needs mentors, apart from the very fact that no one is an expert by themselves and that we all don't know everything, I think that's one thing that we need to remember. And then secondly is that the fact that we're not the best judges of ourselves. And because we can be very subjective in the way we view ourselves or view our potentials and our talents and our performance. And therefore it's always good to have an outside view. Somebody who probably a third eye or a second eye that looks at us from the outside and probably helps us to see ourselves for who really we are. And I think that's for me is the basis and the justification of why anyone would want to have somebody like a mentor that they're working with.
Thank you. Right. Dr. Cesar Mwangi.
Yeah, well, it has been said, and good morning, everybody. A mentor is necessary, first of all, because of the very basic issue that life is very complex. We're all aspiring to get somewhere, we're all aspiring to achieve certain things. And as has been said by my colleagues, we don't have all the answers, we don't have all the formulas. There are things, many things we do not know. And there are others who have been there before us. So I always say all of us operate in a state which is often referred to as unconscious incompetence. We often don't know what we don't know, and we don't know that we don't know. A mentor. So a mentor is necessary to help us actually realize that there are things we do not really know, and they can shed some light on them. So all of us, it doesn't matter what age you are, need somebody like that, or people like that, to help us along the way, to move from this state.
Thank you. Thank you. Mary.
I sort of agree and disagree, because I'm not a fan of mentorship or mentors to
Yes.
the common way that is known. But certainly I agree, you know, with Emily and the others that mentorship is a relationship. And it actually assumes that a more knowledgeable or a more experienced person is guiding a less knowledgeable and or a less experienced person. My view is that we actually have mentors all along our lives. We may not necessarily call them mentors in a formal relationship. We have parents, we have grandparents, we have a boss. They mentor you in certain aspects all along the way. One of the reasons I'm not, and I like the structured way, as Emily said, of those who are in businesses. Many companies are creating mentorships and structuring them for a certain period of time between younger people who come in and the older people. But I think the way typically in Kenya we talk about, oh, can you be my mentor? Please be my mentor. I don't know you. There's no relationship. It's very much a sit back and you tell me what I need to do. So I think in our lives we have many types of people we need. We need a mentor, you need a coach, you need different people at different stages, and a mentor isn't the, you know, or one and all.
Right.
Yeah.
So do we need necessarily to have a relationship? Because I mentioned earlier, I can maybe be following my mentor. I'm the mentee, but he doesn't even know me at all.
No, that's a role model.
Is a role model.
That's a role model.
So the actual mix-up of words, you know, we have coach, we have mentors, we have a role model. Maybe you'll make clarity for us this morning, right? But I just want also to set the stage for our discussion, as you will also be going to the lecterns for the benefits of Emily and also Thomas as well. I think the others have been here, so they know the drill. So I have my yellow card, I have my red card, and I have my bell, just to make sure that I keep time and you keep time as well. So of course also you have your microphone that is on your lapel, and you at some point I'll have to just remove it, put at the back of your seat, then you'll walk over to the lectern, and I'll ring the bell to start, give you five minutes each. So midway, I'm going to raise the yellow. So don't get startled and start winding up. When you see the red, you just know now this is the time to wind up. And then when you go over, then I'll ring the bell, right? So basically that's it. Then you have your camera straight on. That is camera 3. You look at it, of course, speaking to Kenyans, but of course you can always take our reactions as well. But just feel free, whatever you feel that if you want to look at me so that I can give you more oomph and encouragement, please do so as well. Right, so we'll begin with Pete. Just he will walk over to the lectern to talk to us about leadership and mentorship. And as he's doing that as well, we would love to hear from you. Who is your mentor, right? Who do you call a mentor in this country? And in Kenya, do we have mentors, good people that we can look up to when it comes to leadership and maybe credibility and nobility of character as well, right? So let's hear from Pete what he has to tell us today about who is a mentor. Does he have a mentor as well? Or is he mentoring anyone as well? Pete, you've got 5 minutes beginning now.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. The subject of mentorship is one that I resonate with. And as I listen and watch and observe some of the things that are happening around our country over the last number of weeks or months, I watch television and see people analyzing the issues of corruption and the problems of our society. I see some direct connection to this subject of mentorship. I want to share with you 3 very short stories and then just make a few points about mentorship, and then I will sit down.
Can you just adjust the microphone so that we can see you? We can see, of course, you speaking nicely. Just yes.
Are you saying I'm short? Microphone is tall, okay.
Furtively, I'm saying. Okay.
Is that good?
That's okay, thank you.
Okay. The first story I want to share with you this morning is a story about the son of a very good friend of mine. This is a young man who went through college. The parents invested heavily. They borrowed money and put him through university overseas. When he came back, he decided that he wanted to go into a band and play bongo drums. And the father, I remember, came to talk to me and saying, Pete, I don't know, after all this investment, after all we've done, can you imagine he wants to come back and play drums? And the stress that they were going through was that they had ideals or things that they had planned for their son, things that they had hoped that he would go into. And they had somehow channeled him in that direction. And at some point, this young man decided that he wanted to do something differently. And what he was looking for was somebody who would hold him by the hands and guide him along a path that he was not getting encouraged with at home. Now, a second story is not too dissimilar to this one. And this is something that happened with me a number of years ago. A lady, whose name I will not divulge, the wife of one of our senior lawyers in this country, came to my office. I was running a small consulting firm back then, and it was her brother who brought her to my office. And I remember sitting there. It happened to be a very hot day, and I was sort of dozing, and they just sort of barge into the office, and they sit down, and the brother, who was a friend of mine, says, Pete, this is my sister so-and-so. She is a medical doctor. And she has decided that she's going to stop her practice and wants to go into the design business. Some of you who know her would guess who I'm talking about. Now, the reason for him bringing her there was to say, can you help her start a business? Can you help guide her in this new endeavor that she's wanting to put her life to? It was an interesting challenge for me, because even at that time I was thinking, wow, a doctor, that is somebody who is respected in society, somebody who has, reached the pinnacle of what many people just dream about. Here she wants to go into something completely different. She was looking for somebody who has walked along at least some of the paths that she wanted to walk. Not that the person would have all the answers, but somebody who could say, walk in this way, because if you go in this way, you're going to have these problems. This third story is a very personal one. I have had mentors in my life. One particular one was a boss of mine. I don't know why he took an interest in me. I was working for an NGO. It was a large international NGO. And this man who was my boss would once in a while ask me, let's go for a walk. And it was a bit intimidating because he was much older than I was. And we'd go outside, and one time he took me out to where these guys were shining shoes, and we sat. He said, sit down, and I sat, and our shoes were being shined, and we were just chatting away. And I remember the impact that this had on me, that here was somebody who was looking to pass on something to me. And he was doing this by developing a relationship that would not have been easy to develop otherwise. He was reaching out and allowing me to interact with him, ask questions. He would invite me sometimes to meetings where I really had no business being in. And at one time, I remember sitting down with him, and he told me, because I had made a contribution in the meeting, and he advised me that you shouldn't have spoken at that point. You see, sometimes it's good just to keep quiet and listen, because the point you made was a good point, but what you did was you had the effect that you didn't want to have. So he was speaking into my life, he was guiding me, he was advising me, and helping me to be able to make sense of some of the things I was trying to go through. Now, it's a good fortune that the two stories I shared with you, the young man who wanted to be a musician and the lady who wanted to go into business, have succeeded in what they were doing. This young man has gone on, is right now actually a recognized musician in this country and beyond. Now, imagine how many other young people like them are looking for somebody to show them the way. This is what mentorship is all about. The question that we are all asking and often wanting to fix the things in our society are, what can we do? And the question I believe that we should be asking is, what can I be? Mentorship is about who you are to somebody else. And I'll just close with this quote by Isaac Newton, one of the most respected scientists and men of history, actually, who said, if I can see farther than other people, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants. The question is, are you standing on somebody's shoulder? But more importantly, who is standing on your shoulders? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter Deng there. Of course, we took some silent points from him as well this morning. And a question that he's asking, and that beautiful quote from Isaac Newton is, yes, if I can see further, it's because I stood on the shoulders of others. And the question I'm asking you this morning, whose shoulder are you standing on today? Is it a good shoulder? A person with nobility of character, right? Good charisma, and is a good leader, right? These are the questions that we want to explore, and when we're talking about mentorship on the other side of a break as well. We take a short break right now, but remember also you can head over to our Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is our profile name on Facebook, and 20505 is our SMS portal. And of course, we shall be also reading some of the tweets that will be, of course, rushing through our Twitter handle as well. So we take a short break right now. When we come back, we'll hear more from our panelists on leadership and mentorship, right? And we want to also know who is your mentor, especially in this country or even in the entire world. Let's learn also from each other. Right, we take a short break right now. Don't go away. Right, we continue pace with a conversation on leadership and mentoring. Thank you for staying with us here on AM Live, the Leadership Forum. Of course, previously we had from Peter Ndeng about mentorship, who is a leadership coach as well. We have right now on the lectern Emily Osoro, Emily Kamande Osoro. She is the director of Rise and Land, and she's going to speak to us about mentorship this morning, her perspective, and what also really entails a good mentorship program. You have 5 minutes, beginning now.
Thank you. So when I think about mentorship in my own perspective, and I reflect back to my growth as an individual, you know, from a personal perspective and on the professional angle, I look back to seeing my success stories, given that I had somebody who was ready to hold my hand. And in our current setup today, there's a lot of pressures at the workplace, at home, in our different environments that really require us to get some sort of support. And what I would say is that everybody needs a mentor. And more specifically for me, my heart goes to the younger generation because it's around what examples are we setting for them when it comes to careers, when it comes to family life and the social, you know, setup altogether. I think it all boils down to the value systems that we are wanting to create, that we are wanting to set an example for them. And having said that, mentorship in itself has got to be structured for it to be successful. And when I say that, it means that you have actually got to identify who are the mentors. If it's in an organizational setup, who are the mentors going to be and who are the mentees going to be, and being able to match them based on the various strengths and the skills of the different individuals. What are the benefits of mentorship? It really enables individuals to have a greater sense of self-awareness, build self-confidence in themselves, and really improve personally, and also be able to grow either in their careers or in their different areas of life. When you look at it from a point of, you know, who needs it and when does it take place, mentorship can actually happen at any particular time. Only that, there has to be that intention to really be able to run it. Having said that, I do think that generally speaking, we all have to be intentional about modeling and developing mentorship programs in our different environments, whether it's at the workplace or in schools and colleges. And interestingly, I think this conversation comes at the right time because as Rise and Learn, we have formed a mentorship group that is very structured. And the whole idea is to really mainly support upcoming younger professionals in colleges and in the workplace, comprising of human resource professionals who are able to hold their hand and really walk them through the journeys. Because essentially every individual human being needs support. They need hope. They need to be given, you know, a sense of direction. And so when you speak about mentorship as a whole, I honestly think that this is actually a kind of a national-wide agenda that we should be having that conversation around. And when I look at it from my vision, is that every county, for example, has got to have a mentorship program. If we got to that point as a country, I think would be adding a lot of value to our younger generation who today have, form more than half of the workforce today. And when you look around what is happening in our society and the news we are hearing, there's a lot of negativity. And I think it's important that people stand out there to be able to really give the right kind of conversations, a positive approach to things, be it financial, be it social, be it from a personal angle. So mentorship for me is critical as a leadership initiative. It is necessary for the younger generation. It is necessary for the older ones, both in organizations and at personal capacity. I would like to challenge everybody out there, each individual. If there's anything we all have available to us, is time. And mentorship is all about giving. If we can give our time to one individual and mentor them, help them become successful and a better person, I think we will be making a difference in this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily Kamande Osoro. She is the director of Rise and Learn. And of course, she is also the president of International Coaching Federation, the Kenyan chapter here. And of course, she has actually said that, yes, good mentorship also arises from good value system. And we've been talking also a good game about values and national values in this country. can that also be a very good, maybe, laying ground for developing a good mentorship program or programs in this country? As she said, also we can try and also to extrapolate that now into the counties as well. So what are the benefits? Of course, she said one of the benefits that we can accrue from a good mentorship program is a sense of awareness, and we have to be very intentional also when we're coming up with or developing good modeling and a good mentorship program. Up next on the podium, we want to hear from Thomas Mundir, and of course he's going also to give us his perspective on what a good mentorship program is all about. He's Director of Executive Coaching at the Strathmore Business School, and he's up on the podium right now. He's got 5 minutes, and we want also to hear what he has to say for us this morning on good mentorship. Thomas, you have 5 minutes beginning now.
Thank you very much, and good morning, viewers. I begin by first just recognizing and appreciating the men and women that have contributed to the success of my life. Those who I begin first, I have a lot of love and appreciation for my father who passed on in 2011, who for me was my greatest mentor. And I have many other people in my professional life who have given me feedback, who have told me things, who have given their lives, their time to be able to help me to be where I am. And I begin by recognizing them. I would like to just shift this discussion a little bit. I really appreciate what my colleagues have shared so far. But because the context is leadership, I'd like to introduce a different debate, and I think it's the basis of where mentorship is anchored. And that is first appreciating the very fact of what leadership is in the first place. And I think this is a big question we need to answer as Kenyans, and at a time that we are facing all the challenges we are facing. I mean, Peter Drucker, one very famous guru in management and leadership, says managers do things right, leaders do the right things. Leadership in its essence is not about titles, it's not about positions, it's not about being in places of power. Leadership in its very essence is the ability to draw out the best in other people. A leader is a man and a woman who really is comfortable to be around other people who are much better than themselves and has an interest to empower people. And a leader, you can always tell a leader, when you're around a leader, you become better. They make you better than they found you. And I think this is very important for us to appreciate, because I think we place this beautiful term leaders on people who honestly don't deserve this word. And I think a lot of people today are mostly custodians, or what I would call holders of a title, but not necessarily leaders. And I think we need to be very clear as Kenyans that leadership in its very purest form, and it's given its credibility, has a lot to do with morality, has a lot to do with character. A leader is a man and a woman who has an interest and a passion for the good of people. It's a man and a woman who wants to be a servant, is willing to take the last place, is willing to risk everything for the others, and constantly wants to just see people become the very best. That is leadership. And that is why I use the example of my father, because, I mean, I look back 41 years being committed to my mother. I mean, that for me was an incredible example. Even as I was coming to get married, him just sharing with me his thoughts of what made him successful in being able to stay faithful to his wife for 41 years, for me is the greatest example. And he's made me just the kind of man I am because of just that desire to put the very best. And what I saw is sacrifice. What I saw is a man who had no interest in anything of his own, but just wanted to give the very best. And I think those are the leaders. And for me, I'm just very careful that we don't confine leadership to just the politicians we see, but to appreciate that leadership has no boundaries. So that man and a woman who's working at home, that housewife who's at home, who toils every day, who her labor is never recognized, is our leader. That man who's walking the streets of Nairobi today to look for that elusive shilling for their family, who's determined to make an impact and raise their children with character, that is our leader. And I think we need to be very clear about the terminologies we're using and very clear about who really deserves this one. Now, having said that, then I anchor what I believe mentorship is. I'm very proud to be part of an institution, Strathmore University, Strathmore School. We have over 50 years tradition of tutoring and mentoring. So when we speak about mentoring, this has been what has made our institution what it is. Anybody who's gone through our institution knows very well that the very heart of what we do is an interest in the person. And at the end of the day, we've put a mentorship program in the university that has been very successful over the years. Men and women who've passed through our hands, who have had somebody who's much more experienced than them, much more older, who has addressed all aspects of their life. And that's what mentors do. You could have mentors that are specific to a particular area. You have a mentor, maybe you're just a new CEO. Like you get a person who's been longer in CEO and therefore could mentor you. But at times you realize that there are many other aspects that make you successful in your roles, whether as an executive, as a student, as a worker. They're more than just workplace. It's the entire person, your spirituality, your social life, your career life, your personal life, your community engagement. All these things are aspects that a mentor can help you in. And I think for me, I really appreciate what my previous colleagues have raised. And I think they're experts. They've raised excellent qualities of what makes a mentorship program. But I'd like to add just my own, from just the experiences I've seen. There are things you look for in the person of a mentor. And that is one, professional prestige. I mean, the person has to be a person of professional standing. That is in the area that you're interested in them mentoring. For example, if it's a mentorship in the professional world, that they are reputable. Secondly, you also are interested in moral standing. You see, it's very important you align the values you have as a person and that of the person you choose to be a mentor. Remember, mentorship is a relationship. And so there has to be also chemistry. There has to be the ability to be able to align with that person. So it's not just reading a book or just a person because they're an expert. You also have to be able to resonate with that person. The person has to have a passion for developing others. And I think it's a challenge for our culture here. When you go to the Western world, the whole aspect of being philanthropic and the whole aspect of giving to others has been a common thing. But I must also correct that statement and say that traditionally as an African culture, we've always had these structures. They're not new to us. We used to have apprenticeship. We used to have mentorship. It was very common. Any young person that entered into society was prepared for their roles by a person that was much older than them. So we've always had these structures. And therefore it's for us to revisit why they've not worked. And I think character is the essential thing that I feel has been lacking predominantly in the kind of people that can be mentors to a lot of us. And then lastly, of course, the secondary part is the skills, the ability to be trained to know how to mentor. It's one thing to be a CEO, it's one thing to be successful professionally, but it takes a special skill, a special calling, a special vocation to be able to have the ability to transfer knowledge to another. That is not something that you can just take for granted, and it takes a training. So as I close, I think for me, I'm very excited that we can bring this debate, and I think I want us to remember what I said at the beginning. What mentors do is that they are leaders, and they're leaders in the fact as long as they are willing to be aware of the fact that they are not the custodians of knowledge alone, and that they have the interest to empower other people and make other people better than they found them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas Mundia there from Strathmore University. And of course, he says that a good leader has the ability to do the best in others. That is a good aspect of a leader. And of course, it's given you also the good component of good components of a good mentorship program or a good mentor for that matter, right? He has to have professional prestige, moral standing, passion for developing others, and also character is a key and very essential component when it comes to mentorship as well. And also skill set also cannot be left out when it comes to looking for a good mentor or, yes, a good role model for that matter. Let's hear from Dr. Caesar Mwangi, who is Executive Director of Center for Personal Leadership. He's up on the lectern right now. Sir, you've got 5 minutes beginning now.
Thank you. Good morning, Kenyans. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I really would like to recognize the fantastic presentations made by my colleagues here, which are so enlightening. And what was going through my mind is what else can I possibly add to these wonderful ideas? But anyway, I felt that on this topic of mentoring, it is so close to my heart, and I would like to share 2 short stories. One about a mentor I have had for many years since I was a young man, and one about a young man I've been mentoring. Many years ago, I joined Strathmore College as a young accountancy student, and I developed a friendship with a gentleman by the name of Andrew. There are many Andrews, but this is the Andrew I'm talking about. And we used to chat quite a bit. And what I didn't realize was that Andrew had a real interest in me. And I remember one conversation which has never escaped my mind all these years. after I qualified as an accountant, he asked me a question. He told me, Caesar, now that you're qualified as an accountant, you're earning some decent salary, you have a good job, you've bought a car, what's your life going to be all about from now on? What's your next goal? And I thought to myself, what's my next goal? Yeah, I want to make money and maybe I'll get married. He said, yeah, and then you'll get married and then? I said, well, God willing, we'll have some children. And then? Well, maybe I want to buy a house and, at least have a nice home for my family. And he asked me, and then? And I said, well, I'll educate those children and, rise in my career, do well. And he asked me, and then what? And he asked me, is that all? That really got me thinking. But I think what Andrew was trying to put to me was, I really have to think about the purpose of my life. Beyond the education, beyond the family, beyond the house and the car, and the success as the world knows it, is something beyond. This was the most powerful mentor I've ever come across because he made me really think about my purpose in life. And for me, ultimately, that is an important question which a mentor can help anybody with, because then it makes you start living life with a purpose. And that is what makes your life meaningful. And if that is all I could get from a mentor, I think I learned a lot from this man. Take another cue, another story. In life, life is complex. We meet many people. And as you go along, I will not claim that you ever succeed and reach the top of the mountain. We are always work in progress. But somehow along the way, some other people think that you can help them because you seem to have done a few things which they admire and they'd like to learn from you. So I got this young man one time, it was about 10 years ago. I had a relationship with him because I happened to be in charge of the security in my neighborhood. And so I was supervising the security guards in the neighborhood. There were about 7 or 8 security guards in that neighborhood. And I was the supervisor, I used to ensure that they're working and everything's okay. And if there was a burglary, they would call me in the middle of the night. Anyway, there was one particular security guard. He was a young man. And I liked him a lot. He was very cheerful, always eager. We used to talk. He had gotten married and he used to tell me about his family. And he had these ambitions to move beyond becoming a security guard, beyond being a security guard. He was about 25 years old, security guard, earning barely 10,000 shillings. Very tough situation. So one day he told me, Doc, I've saved 5,000 shillings and I'd like another 5,000 shillings loan from you so that I can go and apply to become for driving lessons. I would like to do driving lessons so that I can become a driver. And I knew this young man. I knew he had such great potential. And it used to disturb me that he's a security guard and his next level of ambition is to be a driver. So I told him, look, and I'm going to mention his name. If he's watching, well and good. His name was Justin. He's a fantastic friend of mine up till today. So I told him, look, I don't think you should just become a driver. I think you can make a great businessman. I said, what do you mean? I've never done any business. I said, from what I've known of you and all these couple of years I've known you, you have a very good personality. You know how to speak with people. You present yourself well. And I think you can make a good businessman. So I told him, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a loan to start a business. And I want you to repay me this loan. And in this loan, what you're going to do, you're going to go into Kawangware. You're going to visit a certain distributor who I know there, who distributes certain products. You're going to buy a certain product, which you're going to distribute to the kiosks in Kawangware. He followed instructions to the letter. Because he trusted me. We had a relationship of trust. And he did that. And within a few years, actually, in fact, within 1 year, he told me one day, Caesar, I really appreciate what you told me that day. Because as we speak today, I have too much money. I don't know what to do with it. I'm making so much money from my business that I just don't know what to do with it. And so we're going to continue the relationship. And I told him, open a bank account, start saving. He built a house. And one day he called me after a few years. He told me, in fact, Caesar, I've just bought my first car. Now, we're still friends up till today. But what I learned is that it is possible by just having an interest in somebody who can trust you, that they can go out of their way and do what they thought was impossible. It's a beautiful story, and I know Justin is out there, he's doing well. But let me say one thing. The only thing that makes a difference is the fact that we are willing to spend time in a mentoring relationship, and in spending that time, we develop a better relationship. And as we develop that better relationship, we are driven by love for others. I think that is what makes a difference. In this country, as we speak now, we have a big challenge where we have what we call a celebrity culture, where celebrities are the role models. Celebrities are not bad, it's okay, but there is no relationship right there. The second thing, we also have what we call confused aspirations. We have role models out there who are actually robbers, gangsters, drug dealers, influence peddlers, and all sorts of names. But they're the role models. There is no relationship right there. And these people influence others without any love for others. And I think this is where we need to really examine ourselves as a society and start asking ourselves, do we really want to leave this country better than we found it by making a difference in somebody's life, one person at a time? If we do, mentoring is the way to go. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cesar Mwangi. Lastly, let's hear from Mary Mukindia. She is the CEO of CDI Africa, and also she is an executive leadership coach. And of course, you've had her speak very passionately on issues on leadership here on AM Live Leadership Forum. So we're going to hear from her lastly on what she thinks about mentorships. She says she doesn't really agree with mentorship, but she believes in coaching. So maybe she can be able to elucidate that for us this morning. You have 5 minutes, Mary, beginning now.
Thank you. I grew up in the olden days, what people used to call broken homes. So I went to boarding school when I was probably 5 or 6 years old. And I remained in boarding school very far away in Molo, under nuns, for the rest of my life, because when I finished primary school, I went to secondary school, still in boarding. Then I went to University of Nairobi, which is still boarding. So I really did not live at home for any considerable time. And when I did with my sister and brothers, since we couldn't see our mother, we didn't see many family members, we were really under the houseboy or the housegirl. So for me, mentoring, the first encounter I came across mentoring was in the workplace. I was a young 22, 23-year-old, and I joined this huge company, ExxonMobil, one of the biggest companies in the world. And my boss's boss, his wife, had been my prefect when I was in Form 1 and she was in Form 6. And he was also from my area, and because I guess I was the first lady officer in the oil industry, he took an interest on me. And this was in the 80s. Audience, I'm quite old. And I did well in the interviews, and I was hired, and everybody was, oh, this young lady officer who's come in. And I was a smoker. Haven't smoked for 22, 25 years, but I was a smoker then. Straight from university, I think I'm hip. And after, when I was employed and I was sitting in this room with about 6 analysts, of course, I lit up my cigarette and I was puffing away. Those days you could smoke in offices. And after a couple of days, I guess, of observing me, he called me. And he told me, Mary, and he was very delicate about it. And he said, you know, these things, can you do them elsewhere? It's not very seemingly a young woman, you know, smoking, your reputation and blah, blah, blah. Young, single, 23-year-old. And, you know, find somewhere else to do it. And he meant the bathrooms. And I went back, sat on my desk, and I promptly washed, and I started smoking again. And that was my first lesson, that I should have listened. So my first experience with a mentor is I didn't listen. But this man, who today is well known in the oil industry, George Oshera, continued to mentor me. He did not stop. And he continued to mentor me, to guide me in my path, the way I would behave, the way I would dress. And I must say I rose to the pinnacle through people such as him. And I listened to other things, and I guess I stopped smoking about 10 years later. When I moved into the oil industry and started being an influencer working with the chief executives, I would say that the chief executives then really did mentor me as a young lady. And setting up the Petroleum Institute, which we did as a founder with many other oil industry professionals, I particularly remember somebody like George Minor, who I believe is the chairman of BAT. He's on NIC board, and many others. He's in Starehe. He really mentored me. Himself, people like Mr. Madenge, Evanson Mwaneki, they really continue to mentor me. And even today, these people speak into my life and were able to advise me how to guide myself and how to build the institute. When I was appointed MD of a parastatal, a major parastatal, and my job was to go in and try and turn it around, there are two people who spoke to my life. Again, continued to mentor me in a work situation. We had Dr. Julius Kipnetich, and I had Evanson Mwaneki, who was a former chairman of, after being CEO of Shell, he was a former chairman of KQ, former chairman of BAT. He's now retired in most things. I remember Julius Kipnetich called me and said, Mary, you must be able to find out who everybody is in your organization, who's related to who. Because you just have no idea. You could be talking about firing somebody and that's the son. And that was such a wonderful piece of advice in actually finding out who is who in the organization. The next piece of advice I received was from George Minor, who told me, you need to do a cutoff between when you're coming now and previous. You need to do a forensic audit and be able to draw a straight line. These are two people, even today, 20 years later, I have known, speak into my life and mentor me, and have made me the person I have. When I was wanting to get into more boards, I called Evanson Mwaneki and I said, I want to get into boards. He listened. He said, okay, what it is that you want to do. And twice he invited me onto boards. One, I couldn't join. I was in UN then. And later, even a board I'm currently on. He knows me. He knows my background. So I think what I'm saying is that it has to be a relationship, as the previous speakers have said. The person, in a sense, has to be more knowledgeable, more experienced so that you can guide them because you're less knowledgeable or less experienced. And in this way, these people are able to help you in your personal relationship, in your personal growth, in your personal being able to meet whatever aspirations you want for where you're working on. And for me, what it taught me is that the best mentors, they practice a form of leadership where it is less about creating followers, but more about creating leaders. And I guess that's what Caesar was saying. People who put the relationship first, people who are about character, people who support you and you're your cheerleader. But as I have, and there are famous mentorships that we can think about. I'm not lucky to say I have one person like Oprah has Maya Angelou, or you have, other people who have said so-and-so sponsored me throughout my life. What I have is people who have spoken to my life time and again. They come in and out, and I go for them for advice or an issue that I'm talking on. But I think that if we really want to develop leaders on a larger scale, we have to go beyond having mentors that are creating a leadership. I think we're always going to have different people who are either networking with us, who are training us, who are networking, who are role models, who are mentoring. But I think in the leadership struggle, which Caesar is talking about, and we'll all be talking about, is that how do we train leaders on a wider scale? And that's why I talk about coaching. Because you don't have to have a relationship. It's somebody who's holding you accountable, but you're doing the thinking for yourself. The reason that I feel mentors today, young people today come and say, mentor me. Never met you, never seen you for life. You don't even know anything about them. How do you mentor them? We have career mentorship. That's happening with school mentorship. But at the political level, the kind of mentorship we have seen, whether you're talking about the previous President Moi and Makto, who he mentored, but that was much more it is about more of a leader. So how do we talk about the fundamental lack of values, the fundamental lack of structure, is really talking about coaching and talking about how somebody can speak into your life, make you accountable without necessarily having a relationship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Mukenia. So the question is, who is speaking into your life? right? Who is speaking into your life currently? Are they doing it positively or negatively? And of course, also we have reactions on Twitter that can pick one or two. We can also share with you on air. Governor, the dreamer, is saying a mentor is someone who sees more talent and the ability within you than you see in yourself and brings it out of you. And I think also that was mentioned by Thomas Mandia, the ability to draw the best in others. Also, that is a good mark of a good leader. We have Nhalala Laki saying, so true, leaders are not perfect, but they learn every day. Also, we do have Hamid Sheikh saying that thumbs up, young man Thomas, leadership is being of a good moral and character. Choose your mentors carefully. John Gidang is saying, unfortunately, real mentors are not very common nowadays. Most elderly people don't seem to have time for the youth and vice versa. And also we do have Anthony Okungu saying, Emily gave me my first job. All right, you can remember Anthony, all right? I still remember her call to me to date. She was an easily accessible HR and always encouraged and nurtured the potential of young employers. I admired how well she undertook her responsibility as a HR lead of a huge organization. She is my mentor. And also we have Governor here saying, Governor the Dreamer, everyone has a purpose in life and a unique talent to give others. And when we blend this unique talent with service to others, we experience the ecstasy and the exaltation of own spirit, which is the ultimate goal of all goals. Those are your sentiments there. So let's just get back to discussing. And I like what also John Gidanga is saying, that nowadays, unfortunately, real mentors are not very common nowadays. Is that true? Do you think so? Especially in this country where we confuse politicians and being leaders. And I think also this was nicely uncoupled by Thomas.
Well, I think if you pick something that Mary said earlier about sometimes we don't call them mentors. And sometimes people say there are no mentors. There are mentors. There are people speaking in your life at different times. Parents are mentors. Your colleagues can mentor you, your bosses, and even just your neighbors. Now, the issue here is, are we getting good mentorship or bad mentorship? Yes. Are we being guided properly or not? So I believe that when I started my presentation, I'd said that I was sort of linking it to some of the challenges that we have in our society. And I say that because if you look at a teacher who stands in front of a class and has to prepare to teach, a lot of times, even a preacher will come out way saying, I learned so much more than I think they did. You know, mentorship is something that is a mutually beneficial exercise where the mentee benefits, but the mentor also grows. You grow when you feed into people's lives. And there are many people who say, they look at their mistakes or look at their issues and say, how can I mentor? They'll see right through me, or they'll see the problems I've faced and so on. And I want to just encourage whoever is listening this morning that as you give, so also you receive. That we need to intentionally and deliberately feed into that people who are following and looking up to us. Mm-hmm. So I don't believe that there are no mentors or that there's a dearth of mentors in our society. It's a question of deliberateness, and it's a question of also just changing tact.
Why should one bother? Why should we bother even looking for mentors, Emily?
I think it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. There's so much hunger for guidance and hope, especially in our kind of setup today. And I want to speak to what Mary mentioned earlier, that there are people out there who are looking for mentors. They will write and say, hey, can you mentor me? And you say you don't know them, and it becomes frustrating if you don't get feedback. If nobody ever comes back to you, yet you really, really need this kind of, support system. And for me, it then goes back to institutionalizing the mentorship programs in our schools, in our colleges, in our organizations, and the institutions that we operate in, because people need help, people need support. And I go back to saying, no one has ever succeeded on their own. we have all been successful leaders from where we sit, or anyone else out there, based on somebody who held your hand and supported you. So for me, it really speaks to my heart, because I look at this country and majority of the population is below 30 years, and these are the individuals who will be running our organizations and running this country. And we must therefore provide the time. We cannot say we are too busy, because mentorship is giving a free service. In mentorship, you don't expect anything in return. And therefore, it calls for intentionality to be able to hold the hand of these younger ones who are getting into organizations, who need support to know, how do I run a family, how do I manage the relationships? And I think it's really a collective responsibility and a very important agenda that we need to, I think, take forward. Yeah.
Right. Maybe also another question that, because I've had most of you, there was someone that actually picked you up, held your hand, walked you through, through the corporate ladder up to where you are today. Most young men, especially the millennials, when they come to organization, they come as interns. Do we have a well-structured, career path map that are given to the young people? Because I think there's a dearth of that from most of the organizations that we have currently, corporate organizations for that matter, that you just enter there and you grope your way, through the structure, the maze, even through the induction. But when we have other good companies, like we know the IBMs of this world, you actually given a map that, yes, this is your entry level, Debarl. We expect you after 5 years to be here, and after 10 years, if you will be with the organization, with all the incentives we'll be giving you, we expect you to be here. So these are the benchmarks, the key performance indicators that we know actually you're growing. Do you in any way find out that, or find this particular sort of structure within our corporate organizations here in the country? Because I've never seen one myself where you actually know this is your career path map, and you expect it to grow after this. After 5 years, then it should be somewhere else. Let's hear from Thomas. I think when you're coming up with these programs, what do you actually use as components for that? I don't know this if it's really related to mentorship, but I think also when you're talking about the organization, this should be part of mentorship. Then you have someone really guiding you along the way.
Yeah. First, I think I would just state that there are organizations that have mentorship programs. So it's not true that, I mean, maybe you might have not encountered, but because of, for example, the job that we do, being at the business school, we have a lot of executives that come representing many organizations in this country. And we're aware that the organizations have been very deliberate in setting up very excellent mentorship programs. And having said that, I think I'd like to just qualify two things that we've observed. It's becoming a fashion now, that every organization wants to embed a coaching culture, every organization wants to embed a mentorship program. But there's also a danger in the rushing towards setting such programs without ensuring first that the organization's values, mission also aligns to that program. You see, because if an organization is not really serious about people being at the very center of development, yes, it doesn't matter what program you put, we're going to have a backlash. Secondly, the culture in an organization has to support mentorship and coaching. It's one thing to go there and rush and take your managers through programs and get them trained to be coaches or mentors. It's another to make sure that the culture itself is supportive. The culture itself actually recognizes the potential of people and is really genuinely interested about its employees. They're not just pawns towards achieving certain objectives, but it's genuine. And I think that is key. But I must say that there are many commendable organizations right now doing an excellent job, because we interact with them and we know them, some who are doing a very good job. But I must say it's not a trend. It's not common in organizations to find mentorship programs. Many people have to look for those kind of services outside, and many people even are totally ignorant of what exactly is the difference. I must reiterate, I think what Mary mentioned earlier, coaching is very foreign in this part of the world. So even in our institution, when we're inducting people and creating awareness of coaching, you still have people who ask you, what's the coach's profile? What's his expertise? Has he been a CEO before? Why? It's because they're looking for somebody who has more expertise than them. And so that confusion still exists. And it's a challenge that we all face in this region to be able to embed coaching. So mentorship comes naturally for us in our context to appreciate it and understand it. Yeah.
So how do we do, maybe, because I think also that is a sort of a confusion, that if I do not have the title as a CEO, then I cannot come and mentor you or even coach you, because you seem to have exceeded in terms of of course, the degrees behind your name or the titles behind your name, then you're not with it. How can you tell me I have all these titles, I have all these degrees behind my name? You're not even a CEO. There's no title like a CEO from your resume. I think we can also clarify that. Is this some of the things that you also encounter along the way when you're setting up some of the structures that you have?
Actually, what Thomas says is so true. I'm actually a coach at the Strathmore Business School, and that's some of the issues that come up. But what I want to just say is one of the challenges we live in currently is that we live in a world of externalities, external appearance, external title, external consumer patterns, what we own and how we look. And that has really consumed us a lot. And this is different from the past where people actually lived from an internal perspective. People were good people were wise people, and it did not matter about how they looked externally. So, and this is the whole trend of materialism. But when we talk about mentoring and coaching, we really have to have a genuine desire within us to help other people. And this can only be driven by a certain culture or orientation where we value other people genuinely. You know, I love the culture in the Far East, in countries like Japan. When they meet somebody, they bow. Okay? When you meet a person, you greet them and you bow. A sign of deep respect and appreciation for that person. And in fact, that is their culture. The question is, what culture do we have in this country that will promote the appreciation and love for other people? We seem to not have that too much. And we then tend to have a culture of competition. He who gets ahead by whatever means is the winner. And those who are left behind, that's their problem. So then we don't reach out to help others too much because we don't have a culture of concern for others. And this is something which I think needs to be cultivated in what I call the first school that we all end up or started in life. And that is a school called the family. You know, that concern for others, that love for others starts in the family when parents have children and they love those children, then the children understand what love is all about. And that requires time and presence and availability. But even as we speak today, unfortunately, we're finding trends where parents don't have time for their families, their breakups and their problems, and we're busy doing all other things except taking care of that first school. And that is where love is taught. And as we grow older, we find that it is then difficult to appreciate what love is all about because we didn't experience it. So I think we have a complex problem here, but we can work on it once we appreciate the challenge that we have. Yeah, right. I think that's what and it goes right up to the corporate sector. Yeah.
Right. I think hearing all of you, Mary, as well, character also seems to be an overarching issue here. And we had one of you saying that we need to have professional prestige, moral standing, passion for developing others, character is essential, skills as well. But it seems we cannot really have holistically all these things rolled into one if you're looking for a leader in this country. You might be having all the professional prestige, maybe the excellence as far as executing your work is concerned, but you're lacking in character. Will you call that person still a leader? Because yes, if we may open the closets of so many of our leaders, then some of them are not really warranted to be some of the leaders, that, so we speak, or the politicians that we call in this country to be leaders, to be holding some of these positions, or even in organizations as well.
No, I agree with you completely. I mean, there are some basic things, you know, like it straight, basic foundation. Yes. Character is one of them. And in fact, for me now, as I'm getting older and older, I'm thinking that you really don't have to have much as a leader in terms of skills or things, other than knowing how to influence people and have a vision that you can get people to buy into that vision. And then how do you influence them? You know, you don't have to have all these many degrees or so many years experience. It is what's your fundamental character. Because that's what will let people know, do you care about me? Can you influence me? Because leadership for me is about influencing people to a vision that you are the carrier of, and rally them together, motivate them together to achieve a certain end. And it's very interesting. I was just thinking of something Julius Kipngetich said at the coaching week when we started it at Strathmore. It's funny, my president is here of the Coaching Federation, Strathmore is here, and we were having the coach activity week, and you had coaches on here. And he said that previously... Oh,
during the coaching week?
Yeah, during the coaching week in May. And he said something quite profound, if you let me. He said, In the olden days, in the times of industrializations, leaders were usually engineers because it was all about machinery. It was about machines, getting things together. Those were the real vehicles of industrialization. That's what propelled companies to the fore. So the leaders who were brought in then, who were CEOs, top leadership, were engineers because you needed all the machines and understand the complexity of machines. And then when machines became commonplace, leaders really came from finance because it was about money. How do you buy those machines? How do you finance a company? How do you get yourself on the stock exchange to muscle a lot of money? So the top leaders, the CEOs, the top executive levels were really finance people because it was all about money. But the world evolved and you can get money. The issue is not money. The issue is finding the customer, serving the customer, finding the market. And therefore, the top leadership people became marketing managers, people who understood the customer. Those were the real top leaders for a long time. And what he was proposing and saying is that life has changed now. In this digital world and connected world, it's actually about people. It's about connecting with people. It's about engaging people, what you were saying. It's about human-centric. How do you get productivity out of your people? And you're saying now the leadership that's required is about soft power. It's about being able to tap into the person, engage the person, and that brings about your profitability. And that's why you're seeing things like coaching, mentoring, all these issues coming up now, because unless you touch people, unless they want to work for you, what you were talking about having a career path, most of the Y generation, the Z generation, they don't care. They work for you 2 years, 19 months, they move. The issue of having a career path, and people move quite easily, they're very fluid. They can work at home on internet. So how do you connect with the people? And for me, there are various ways, there are structures. There are companies now who said, we want women in leadership. Therefore, you have KCB, Standard Chartered, GT Bank, a number of companies coming up with ultimately saying structures of mentoring women to make sure that the women are getting to the top leadership, because they're coming in very many at that middle level, but as you go up the echelon, they're missing. So others are saying young CEOs, how do we mentor the young executives you're talking coming in? So again, they can partner with a leader. Some of them are doing in groups. And then there's SMEs. For example, we've set up a foundation, the Bogwa Rosemary Foundation, which is structured. We have a training program, then 6 months, and then an 18-month working with them. We'll have a relationship because we know them. Then we connect them with businesses. We use our contacts. So that's mentoring SMEs. So I think the soft power and finding ways to touch people, to help them, is really the kind of leadership that we want. But we don't see it in politics.
We don't see it in politics.
We don't see it.
What you see in politics is if you have a silver tongue, you know, you have this charisma, you can move people, then that truly is a mark of a leader. We miss it, don't we? Peter Deng, as also we're preparing our closing remarks.
You and I had a small conversation a few days back about this word role model. And that to me is what's missing. You know, we can talk all day long about mentorship and coaching and at a very theoretical level. At the end of the day, the people that we're talking to, the people we're trying to support, advise, needs to believe that there is a value in what you're telling them, that there is truth in what you're telling them, that the society will reward hard work, that if you're saving and you're being thrifty and you're being somebody who is concerned for others and so on, that you will in fact succeed. But if we continue to glorify success without character, we'll continue to uphold people who are, like you said, you know, silver tongues. They can talk and so on, but they cannot actually stand up and say, here's how I've earned my money. This is a topic in Kenya today. How did you get that house? How do you tell me to go to school and work hard? When you cannot be able to tell me, I borrowed money, I sacrificed this way, and this is what I did. We need to be honest about this. That in this country we need people, and there are many. I don't believe that we have a society of bad people, but we need people who have character, people who have proven themselves to step forward, show the way, reach down, take somebody else and say, it can be done even in Kenya. Yeah.
Thank you. Emily, also your closing remarks.
Yeah, I think speaking to that subject, you know, John Maxwell says charisma can get you through the door, but character keeps you inside. And really everything rises and falls on leadership. In our setup, in the context of this country and politics, I think you can be a good leader and still be in politics. I do think it's a matter of choice. It goes back to the value systems and where we start them. You know, and as Pete does say, one, it has to be intentional, it has to be a choice, and we really have to be able to give that drive, you know, as leaders when you're given that responsibility. And for me, just to close up, is to say that for you to improve as an individual, you need somebody who can hold your hand. Nobody does it on their own. You need to be able to really have somebody who's going to hold your hand and follow them, because you can't succeed on your own. And finally, is just to really invite all Kenyans. We have a East Africa HR Symposium coming up, and some of the things we'll be discussing are around mentorship and leadership on the 4th to 7th of July. These are conversations that we will be having.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Right, let's hear from Thomas Mandia.
Let me just be very clear. Leadership is character, and the two are not different. So when we talk about leadership, we're not talking about skills. And people can confuse this, thinking leadership is about how you do things. It's about predominantly character, because that's what gives you the credibility, the moral authority for people to follow you.
Yes.
And I think anybody watching here has to ask themselves one question that makes me every day have sleepless nights, and it's my examination of conscience at the end of the day. Why should anyone be led by you? And I think it goes to the question of what is your moral credibility for people to follow you? And then I think the other thing we need to just to reiterate is that I think there's so much confusion about thinking that leaders are born. And we have to remember leaders are made. You train people. So even if today you don't have the character we're describing in this forum, there are opportunities to develop that. And I think it's important to get a coach and a mentor to work with you.
Thank you.
So to identify, first the beginning point is your self-awareness, a knowledge of your weaknesses, and get somebody to work with you in developing that. And lastly, I think I want to echo what Caesar said, and I really love that point, and that the first school of leadership is actually the home, the family. We have to make the duty to strengthen the family institution, and at the same time, our education system, what we reward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Caesar Mwangi, your closing remarks?
Yeah, in my closing remarks, I think the word character has been mentioned. Character is simply the habitual practice of virtues. What we're seeing in this country is the habitual practice of vices at the leadership level. And this is a big tragedy because it is misleading everybody, and it is leading us into a ditch, and we really need to examine ourselves. I always say there are many mountains to conquer. You can conquer Mount Kilimanjaro, you can conquer Mount Kenya, you can even conquer Mount Everest. But the biggest mountain you have to conquer, my dear friends, is this mountain called yourself. All those vices that hold you down, all those lies you keep portraying to the public when you're a political leader, all those shenanigans and corruption that you're involved in, you need to conquer that, and you need to conquer yourself and get rid of those and really live a life of true leadership.
Right, thank you. Mary, finally, your closing remarks.
I think it's to just say what everybody has said. You need people to speak into your life. And they are there. You just don't see them every day speaking to your life. You don't have to have one person who walks throughout. If you're lucky, you can. But I say, if you can't find somebody who's a relationship in that issue you're having, find yourself a very good coach. But on the public arena, I fully agree the issue is about values. And there are many, many good leaders with character, but the few that occupy our attention 80% of the time, for me, if we have impunity, continued impunity, then it discourages so many people who want to do well because their values they see portrayed are not what they would like, but then that becomes the new yardstick. So for me, the issue of impunity, openness so that the people can see what is going on and call it all would be best.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary Mukindia, the CEO of CDI Africa and also Executive Leadership Coach. Thank you for coming through this morning. Dr. Caesar Mwangi, who is the Executive Director of Center for Personal Leadership. Thank you for coming through as well. Thomas Mandia, Director, Coaching and Executive Mentoring, Strathmore Business School. Thank you for coming through. Also Esther Kamunde Osoro, Director, Rise and Land, and also the President of ICF Kenya chapter. Thank you for coming through. And also, lastly, Peter Ndeng, who is an executive coach and also prolific writer. Thank you for coming through this morning as well. And of course, those are good comments coming through the social media, and of course also a rich stream of information also from our panelists. And the question that also is arising, what sort of values are you portraying? This is a question that is being asked, right? You as a leader, you as a mom, you as a dad, do you have a clear conscience, which they say is the softest pillow when you go to sleep at night? Do you have that pillow that you've not murdered someone, you've not stolen anyone's money, right? You're not sleeping with someone's wife or daughter or defiling anyone in school, right? What sort of value as a country and character do we have And we have the proper character that we call nation, and what is it? We're still struggling to find that. What is our national values? Thank you for watching the Leadership Forum. My name is Debarl Inea.